So it's day 4 since the hurricane and day 4 without power, so I haven't been filming a lot. But I'm back at the shop. Last night I came here, I've been using flashlights to work. But I put the intake manifold and all the covers back together. One thing to note is those little tiny clips you pulled off of the injector plugs. You can actually put those on the plugs first. You can put the clips over the plugs and then snap them into place. It's a lot easier to get them on than it is to take them off. In the dark in a shop with no electricity, dropping them and trying to find them is a pain, so I don't recommend that. One mistake I had, and it's really not my mistake, it's the book's mistake, but the book for the maintenance for this car, the service manual, states torque settings. I've noticed some typos in the book and all kinds of stuff, but the VTEC spool valves for the VTEC solenoids here, they have 3 bolts holding them on. This is the part number for those bolts, and the reason I know that is because I had to buy 2 of them because I deformed 2 of them. I stretched them out, and that's because the book says on 3 different pages, I believe, 3 different torque settings. It says 9 pounds, 12 pounds, and 16 pounds. So I torqued them to 9 pounds, and I was like, I'll do it in the middle of the 3 they're recommending. So I went to go to 12. Well, it never got to 12. I just stretched the bolts. So now I bought 2 new bolts, and I redid it to 9 pounds. Hopefully that's the right one. Today, I believe I'm going to jack up this engine hoist that likes to fall down, figure out how to support the engine in the air without all the weight in this engine hoist, because if I leave, the engine will be back on the ground. So I need to get a milk crate or something under there so I can take off the oil pan, because I need to get the baffle welded in there. I would do it here, but there's no power here, and I'm not a great welder anyway. I could stick metal together. I'm sure I could do it, but I'll bring it to Morafab. He does great work. So I will do that, and then after I get the oil pan back on, I put the oil pump in and get the pan back on with a new gasket, I will then be ready to do the timing belt. Once the timing belt is done, I will then do a valve adjustment, and that should be it. Then it'll go back in the car. I mean, there's a lot of little stuff I have to do, but that's pretty much it. He's bored. He doesn't like wrenching on stuff. This is the oil pump gasket. Here's the oil pump gasket right there. And here's the part number for the new oil pump gasket. The oil pickup tube has an O-ring right there. And the part number for that O-ring is right there. This part has an O-ring that goes there, and another that goes there. The oval shaped one is this part number. Okay, get the focus. There you go. And the O-ring for right here is this part number. I may be incorrect about that being the part number for this oval one, only because it doesn't seem to fit that snug. If I turn it over, it just falls out. Most of the other O-rings fit snugly, so I'm curious about this one. So actually, you need 2 of these part numbers here. So we get the focus a little better. The light in here sucks because there's no electricity. So actually you need 2 of these part numbers, and they both go on either side of this, so on both sides of this, which go into here. Okay? Now I'm going to apply Honda Bond liquid gasket to the actual oil pump. It says to do it to the inside of the broken line. You can find this on page 721, sorry, section 721, it's page 151. It says to apply it to the inside of the broken line, and I think you could actually do it on the block. I don't see why not, but I'll do it on the pump, just because that's the way it's saying. So So go along with the razor blade, wipe everything down, make sure both of the mating surfaces are clean of any debris and oil. I put mine right on the block. So then you're just going to take your finger, just like this, and just lightly push. Not too hard, just to kind of flatten it out. You don't want to go all the way down to the metal, but you want to take off any excess too. So just lightly push. A little bit of pressure. Once you have it all pushed down, nice and smooth, then you have about 20 minutes to put it on from the time you apply it. You'll have to articulate your oil pump gear here so it corresponds to the shaft flat points there. Once you snug them all up, you'll start to see a little bit of the excess if you have any squirting out there. Not too much. You don't want too much, so that means you put too much on and you'll get it into the oiling system part of the pump too. So now you torque them all down. I believe the 10 millimeters are all 9 foot-pounds, and the 12 millimeter bolts are 16 foot-pounds. So even though I didn't have a lot of excess liquid gasket Honda bond coming out, I still went to the bottom where it meets right there, and I wiped away any excess from the bottom so that when I put the oil pan gasket on, it won't interfere with it at all. Then the next thing I did was put this oil, I believe it's called the oil flow pipe, back on. Those bolts right there are 9 foot-pounds. Next step is the 6 bolts for the windage baffle tray. Those are each 9 foot-pounds. Next is the oil pickup. The shorter bolts go under the windage tray on the bracket. Longer ones there, those are also 9 foot-pounds. New day at the shop. Power's back on. I haven't been here in a few days. Been taking care of things, so I'm trying to pick up where I left off. I don't believe I ever torqued this mount down, so these 3 bolts for it are 43 foot-pounds. So I got my oil pan baffle welded in place there. Just in case anybody's curious, it's a Cedar Ridge one. They have to be welded at an angle like that. That's the only way they fit in. So it's a little higher up on one side than it is on the other. Anyway, I had to take off the old oil pan gasket, and it was really glued on there. It was basically the same difficulty of getting it off as you would getting off windshield molding. So, I mean, like the black glue kind. So it was really stuck on there. In fact, I stabbed myself with a razor blade earlier, so that was fun. But anyway, I'm replacing the gasket. Here's the new one. I believe the book, there's a certain sequence to tighten it on, put it on, and then they want 10 foot-pounds. But I was looking online and people were saying that 10 foot-pounds is sometimes too much, so just kind of go in the sequence and tighten it up until it squishes this to the edges so that it's just as wide as this. You want it to basically just start to compress all the way around, and that should make a good seal. This is the sequence of the oil pan bolts for torquing them to 10 pounds. Again, don't necessarily go by the actual torque specifications. Just tighten it down until it starts to get a little compressed, but not too compressed. So there's 4 studs on the oil pan, and when you push it straight up to get it to hold in place, you put the nuts on the studs. But the studs are shorter than the bolts, so it pulls the oil pan up a little higher. So what I'm doing is I'm going around with the bolts now and just putting in a couple threads so that when I loosen these, it lowers the pan to rest onto the bolt like that. And that way it's still up there. I know it's in line, and you can see where the oil pan gasket is a little floaty here and not quite staying in line. This allows me to get the bolts through the correct way so that everything's being held in place by the bolts in the proper orientation. Also, before I had the transmission off, when I had it off would have been a better time to do this because it makes it a little more difficult to get in between the transmission housing where the flywheel is and this oil pan and gasket. So I wish that I had done it while the transmission was off. However, with the transmission off, you lose the hoist point right there. So, I'm sure I could have still figured it out, but yeah, in hindsight.